Hey beautiful boys and girls of the internet. So, when I'm reading a book with a friend, when we're both reading the same book, one of the questions that is most often asked is, what do you think that the author meant in this passage? I'm here today to tell you that that question is much more useless than you think it is. Disclaimer, I'm studying for comprehensive exams at Wabash College, and I thought for this week's video I would do the grand mal test. I have to be able to explain so many things about my English major to non-English professors in a matter of a few minutes. So I'm going to do the grand mal test. Can you take your super specific academic knowledge and explain it to your grandma in 2 or 3 minutes? Thanks for helping me study. So when you're reading a book, there is the text, and then there's the person who crafted this text, the person who crafted the meaning, you might say, the author. In this specific case, it's Donna Tartt of The Goldfinch. And whether you do this consciously or not, a lot of times you sit down and you open this book and you think, the meaning that I'm going to get from this book is given to me by the author. The author set the meaning on the page. And that idea sounds pretty simple and pretty correct. Why else would you sit down to read words on the page if you weren't trying to get meaning from them that the author was giving to you? However, I'm going to argue that that's one of the least important ways that you get meaning from a text. And by I'm going to argue, I mean that I'm going to cite to you a bunch of literary critics in the last 100 years who made this argument. And all of this begins with language. Okay, I'm going to flash a word up on the screen. Mug. A mug, you know, a coffee mug, you drink tea out of it sometimes. Also a mug. Also a mug. Another mug. So when you come upon the letters M-U-G in a text, you think to yourself, consciously or not, you picture a mug. That is going to be a little bit different from the mug that I picture. Maybe they're different colors, maybe they're different sizes. And those are really subtle differences. For the meaning of the text, it doesn't really matter if you think the mug is red and I think that it's blue. However, the author wrote down one word and we pictured two kind of separate things. Not only that, but the mug changes a little bit depending on the words that come after it. The mug was broken versus the mug was shattered. I think glass in the second one and maybe porcelain in the first. So not only did we come up with two separate ideas for mug, but that idea changed as we went along. So that word mug might be affected by words that come after it and also might be affected by words that come before. So these differences in mug construction, pretty small deal. However, what happens when we do the same with words like love or curiosity or passion? I don't even want to think about how many different definitions we could come up with for love. This seems like a pretty simple problem, right? We're just going to come up with a little bit of a separate construction when two people read the same text. The problem is that we have a potentially infinite number of people reading this text at potentially infinite different times. If I read a book about New York City prior to 2001 and the World Trade Center, and you read it in 2003, we're going to come up with a little bit of a different meaning, regardless of what the author set down on the page. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the death of the author. Literary critics eventually realized that the moment the text was finalized by an author, it could be read in potentially infinite number of ways. In the future, certain events could happen that would change the reading of that text. Here's a great example. Ernest Hemingway, he commits suicide at the end of his life. Then you read a little bit differently about some of the depression and alcoholism in his books. So I know we like to think that we're very similar as groups of human readers, but I grew up in an American culture in the 1990s. And other readers may have grown up in a 1980s culture in Somalia or a 2050 culture in Russia. You get the point. Each of these cultural differences is going to change the way that you read a text. The author has no control of the background that you bring to the text. That is the first idea that leads to the death of the author. The author loses control once it's on the page. When we're looking at a text, we just determined that meaning for the text doesn't come from the author. So where does it come from? I and a lot of literary critics would argue that it comes from the sum of your personal experiences and your personal reactions to the words on the page. Let's think about that for a second though, because your personal sum and the sum of someone else's personal experiences are much different. That means that we have more than one meaning. That means that we have potentially infinite numbers of meaning. But it's even more incredibly complex than that, because if I read the text right now and I finish it and I say, this is my meaning, something is going to happen to me tomorrow that alters the way that I read this text. And the day after that, and the day after that. This gets to one of the central ideas of post-structuralism and literary criticism. Not only do we not care about the meaning that the author attempted to give us, not only do we have a crazy number of meanings between all of us, we must also defer that meaning because something is coming tomorrow that will change it. In short, language becomes this fluid, complex web that never ends in a tangible meaning and must always be deferred. It's a simple question, right? What is the meaning of the text? However, no simple answers. And that's why when you sit down at Starbucks over your Frappuccino and your friend asks, yeah, but what did the author mean by this? Turn to them and you reword their question. What meaning did you find in the text today? Alright everybody, thanks for dealing with my stressed self. I hope you learned something today. Comment below with any questions, like the video, send it to all of your friends, post it on your Facebook wall, post it on the side of your house. You get the point. And I just realized I will see you guys next week when I'm still not done with comprehensive exams. Best wishes.